Thank you, Mr. President, and can I commend you for putting together such an excellent session with such important guests, so thank you for your attendance. The first question I was going to ask Mr. Bell was about the use of these missiles. Do you regard Iran as being the main threat in terms of, the number one threat to Europe and the US in terms of the launch of missiles? And given the WikiLeaks, unfortunate WikiLeaks exposures, is this, the emphasis on missile defense, actually an alternative to the kind of military action against Iran that has been clearly demanded by Middle East states, such as the Saudis, as we note, and also threatened by Israel? I mean, is this a counterbalancing policy in terms of, alternative to doing something about Iran directly? The second question really referred to what the ambassador was saying. Is this missile defense system capable of being used against the Russians, against Russian missiles, or will there be actual technical... Excuse me, do you mind? Thank you. Could the defense system be used against Russian missiles, or are there technical reasons why this system could not be used against Russian missiles? I mean, the ambassador is on record talking about why do NATO gamekeepers invite the Russian bear to go hunting rabbits when they have bear hunting rifles, in one of your asides, an online post, I believe. Can this system actually be used against Russian missiles, or is actually that a bit of a fallacy? I mean, is it really only limited to the sort of lower quality missiles that Iran might fire? Thank you.
Merci.
Ambassador. I'll also be handing the floor to Mr. Bell a little later, so that because there was a question addressed to him directly.
Первый вопрос был задан вообще больше все-таки.
Thank you very much. Well, I think the first question was actually addressed to Mr. Bell about the caliber of these rifles, hunting rifles, whether they were bear hunting rifles or rabbit hunting rifles. And I would say that it is extremely dangerous to try and take a shot at a rabbit with a large caliber rifle. I have hunted myself, and I've done this, and there wasn't very much of the rabbit left, so I wasn't able to take much home with me after that particular hunt. So this is a highly important question. It's a question of principle as well. Obviously, we agree that we have to cooperate in those areas of common interest. But I'm not hiding anything. I'm being completely frank, very open. There are very many people in Russia who believe that this is just a pretext, that Iran is being taken as a pretext to install a missile defense system on the borders with Russia. Maybe this is a bit of a phobia. Our American colleagues are ensuring us that this is a technical system. Okay, yes. We take your word for this. But we also believe that as far as we're concerned, the best thing would be to have properly organized cooperation. And in that way, we would be ensured that the system is not going to threaten the defense of our country. This is our approach. It's our logic, if you will. We see that the system, in technical and geographical terms, economic and financial terms, obviously has to be designed in such a way that it can counter the real threats and risks that exist. That's the first point. Secondly, if you take a look at the missile interceptors, the systems that exist at the moment, these are not so much for air or based missiles, air-launched missiles. These are specific systems that can take a look at certain objectives on land and intercept missiles from an enemy territory. And they are so detailed that they will be able to come through one of the windows in this meeting room without necessarily destroying the rest. So there's that aspect. Moving on to Iran, we do not like the fact that there is a country that wishes to avail itself of weapons of mass destruction and of developing a means of being able to transport these missiles. Now, it is true, as the ambassador said, that we have supported a number of the Security Council resolutions, the United Nations, where it says that obviously Iran has the right to develop a peaceful nuclear industry, but we have to be very careful about their potential for developing nuclear weapons, and we as a country are close to Iran. If you take a look at the Middle East region and Iran, and if there is a kind of system of mass destruction nuclear weapons, then obviously we will be under threat. And so this is why we have to support, wish to support anything that is going to be done by the international community to be able to do away with any initiative which would lead to proliferation. And within the context of the non-proliferation group, we have said that we should not only be focusing on Iran, we also have to take a look at those other countries that have weapons of mass destruction already, and not much mention is made of those countries. And those countries that are working to, they're trying to improve their weapons, but nothing is being said out in the open about this. At the moment, we seem to be focusing on one single country, and we feel that is a bit of an ideological approach. We would feel that it would be better to try and analyze, assess all those countries around the world that would be able to develop this kind of technology, and we have one or two doubts. There are representatives from France who have their own particular position in the missile defense group in the context of NATO, and I've talked to a number of generals, French generals, who have said that the best way to neutralize this threat is to have a good national system, deterrent system. Turkey, for example, is a neighboring country to Iran. And obviously they have to maintain some form of relations where they're not using the language of threat. So we think that the best thing is to not beat around the bush, to put the question directly to the country, ask what their fears are, who they feel is a direct threat to them, so that one can provide the right kind of guarantee that that country is not going to then become embroiled in an arms race. I'm in favor of open political dialogue, but at the same time one cannot deny the fact that there is a potential for material a threat being created.
So just a couple of minutes, if you wouldn't mind, particularly on Iran, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Yes, I will be brief, Mr. Chairman. Now, it is the fact that the United States views Iran as the principal missile threat in terms of NATO security. Just quoting the Vice President's op-ed from last week that I referenced earlier, Vice President Biden said, the ballistic missile threat to our allies, partners, and deployed forces is real and growing, particularly from Iran. Of course, it's not just the United States that has serious concern about Iran's unwillingness to meet the requirements of the IAEA in terms of full disclosure of its past nuclear programs. or serious concerns about the increasing range of ballistic missiles being tested by the Iranian state. I don't need to remind this audience of the UN Security Council resolutions and what's driving that, or the diplomacy that's been led, in fact, by the EU to try to bring us to a peaceful reconciliation in terms of these issues. But I would just say most fundamentally that this then is not, to use Ambassador Ragosin's phrase, an ideological construct. This is simple prudence in terms of a military alliance equipping itself with the military capabilities it needs to meet an identified threat. The Iranian missiles that exist today can already reach targets in Europe. That is why the initial phases of this defense system are tailored to be able to meet that precise threat, unlike the Bush plan with a longer range intercept capability. And the ambassador has asked, why are we hunting with guns that are too big? Why are we worrying now about Iranian ICBMs that don't exist? And again, my answer is that this is simple prudence. As our friends from industry can attest when they appear, the lead time on a military acquisition program is quite long. 2010 is the earliest, if these development programs go well, that this system will have a capability against ICBMs. That's 10 years from now. The projections about when Iran can acquire intercontinental ballistic missile range systems, given the current trend they're on, those projections arrive before 2010. So I don't see this as any way being driven by ideology or a miscalculation of events that we're monitoring very closely with regard to Iran. Second, and then finally, I would again say fundamentally that the system that is being deployed by the United States as a contribution to the architecture that NATO will build is not capable of threatening Russia, not aimed at Russia, not in any way destabilizing the secure strategic balance that the United States has with Russia. And that is based not just on the location of the ships that will carry these interceptors, but the speed of the interceptors themselves and the limited number of interceptors that will be deployed compared to the vast size of Russia's strategic nuclear arsenal. In fact, if you tried to use one of these interceptors to destroy a Russian ICBM that was launched from the interior of Russia, let's say hypothetically, towards North America, the interceptor would be chasing the ICBM and it would never catch up. So Ambassador Ragosin's concern is based on a hypothetical projection into the future, where if you imagined that the locations of the ships changed, for example, if for some reason the United States Navy decided to deploy all of its Aegis cruisers, 20 or 30 of them, to the Barents Sea and line them up like a picket fence, if you assume the numbers of interceptors were multiplied exponentially and the capability then progressed 10 years from now, would there be some notional hypothetical capability? But one can always construct academic scenarios, but we have to operate in the real world. And in the real world, that scenario, of course, is not plausible, first. And second, it's our fervent hope that over the course of this 10 years, as we cooperate with Russia, not just on missile defense, but fundamentally in our new reset relationship, that we will achieve a genuine strategic partnership with Russia that would make that scenario even more absurd on its face.